Welcome to Learn to Build a Business podcast, the show that brings you insights, stories, and strategies from those who've made the leap from working professionals to successful entrepreneurs. With your host, Ray Ortega.
Welcome to the Learn to Build a Business podcast, where we help working professionals transition to being their own entrepreneur and owning their own business. We have a special guest today, someone that I've met months ago, back in October, and who I'm really excited about her business and what she has to show you today. And her name is Sheena Ramnarine. I got it right. I said it on the first time. And she's prior military turned entrepreneur, where she teaches businesses on how to make money with the federal government. So Sheena, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Yeah. So since October, I've just been on this wild ride, entrepreneurship, building a business. And I'm so excited to be here today to share some of that with you and with your people.
Awesome. Yes, I really appreciate you coming on, because the thing we talked last week, and I was super excited to get you on because what you're doing is something that is super tough. At least it feels that way. I know, like in my company, we've been trying to do work with the federal government for years, or any government, even municipal government, and we felt like it was very difficult. But after talking with you last week, you made it seem like it was a lot simpler. So tell the viewers what it is that you're doing. What's your background? How did you get into the space of government requisition?
So a little bit about me. I do have a military background and left that. It's now a prior life, and decided that I wanted to do something completely new. Mm-hmm. What that was, initially, I didn't know, right? Because when you start on this entrepreneurship journey, you're like, oh, I can do so much. Well, got wind of government contracting, knew a little bit about it, but not much. I knew that, hey, there's work that people come in and fix our HVAC system or some janitorial services, but I really didn't know the intricacies of it. So I got into learning about government contracting, how to become a contractor myself, and was able to really simplify the process, where something that seems so cumbersome is broken down into bite-sized pieces that literally anybody can do and add to their business. From someone who's brand spanking new entrepreneur to businesses that are established.
Yeah. And that was the part that interested me a lot when you were talking is, like you said, it's a little bite-sized things, because there is a process in order to be able to go work for the government. There's a process you need to follow. And I think what you were talking to me about is how you've kind of dwindled that process, like you just said, into small bite-sized pieces. So if you could tell me a little bit about how did you got there? Like when you started working on this, like how did you come up with like the framework or the small pieces that you came up with to do this?
So I looked at what I needed to know or to do to make this simpler for myself. Mm-hmm. Because there's steps, there's processes. I have to look at the solicitations. I have to read and understand what the government agency is asking me for. Mm-hmm. And then I have to be able to deliver that. And so with that, because I'm doing this every day, because I love what I do. Yeah. I wake up every morning like excited, which may sound really weird, but to get on that computer and find a solicitation and bid on it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so in that process of saying, okay, if I just had a pen and paper and I'm looking through these, what are some key things that I should look for? And if I had to explain it to someone, they can look for to help them really simplify. If there's 20 PDFs that they're supposed to be looking through, look for some key items. Yeah. And then from there, you can work.
That's awesome. So one thing that you said a second ago, you said you're really passionate, you really love this. One of the things that we try to teach people is sometimes when you go into business, there's two schools of looking at going to business. One is I want to go make some money. And the other one's like, I want to go work on something that I'm passionate about. What would you consider this to be?
So initially this was I want to go into business to make some money.
Yeah.
And then once I was like, oh my gosh, this is a game changer. I love what I do.
Money makes anyone passionate, actually. Like when you start making money, like, I love this. This is awesome.
Great. Yeah.
Absolutely awesome. So walk me through your current process. Like when you're going, and you said you go and look at solicitations, walk me through a normal process of how do you go about looking at government opportunities?
So the government posts opportunities on a website called sam.gov, and about 40 to 90,000 solicitations a day, meaning they're posting on this website, which is free, letting vendors or contractors know, hey, this is what we are looking for. So there's a place where you don't have to go and guess, oh, can I provide a service or things like that? They're already telling you what they want, when they want it, and how they want it. So I'll go on sam.gov, find a solicitation that, I think is appealing, whether it's buying lumber or boulders or a janitorial service. And I will actually pull that solicitation up, look through it, read through what they're asking for. And then if I personally cannot provide that service, turn around and find a business that can. So essentially using a middleman strategy to find a business that can provide the physical work or product. And then I can present that quote for said service to the government.
I love that, what you said, because this was a part of the conversation we also had last week that I'm glad you mentioned it here, because I wanted people to understand is sometimes people think that in order for me to get a government contract, I have to be in that field or have to be an expert in that field. And what yours, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're saying is, even if that is not the field you're the expert in, as long as you can find the resources to perform the task, you can essentially bid on those contracts.
That is exactly correct. As long as you can find the resources, you can bid on that contract. Okay. So for example, my business is in consulting. I am not a aggregate seller or supplier, but that does not restrict me by any means. I can still go out and find a company that may be able to sell boulders or lumber, partner with them, and then present that to the agency that is requesting that.
Nice. So how would you, and I'm just asking this out of my own personal experience, how do you get through, because when you usually do these government contracts or you bid on them, there's usually, you have to provide some proof of history or work history or some type of expertise in that field. How do you get through that with being the middleman in these deals?
So in that instance, if I don't have the experience, and I will tell you early on, I did not, I did take on the experience of the company that I am working with. Awesome. So if they happen to be selling lumber, I will ask them for, their past performance, or, what are their reviews on Google or wherever, those reviews may be. Yeah. And then I will attach that to the proposal.
Yeah.
So this whole, the whole bit of it is I am transparent with the agencies on who I am working with in order to provide and supply the goods or service.
Awesome. Okay. That makes sense. Now tell me this, when you're, what made you, when you were doing this, and I don't know if you answered this already, but I definitely want to get back to this because this is really important. What was the point that you specifically knew that you could do this model, that this model would work for you?
So the specific point when that happened.
Like everyone who starts a business, right? We all start a business with this idea, right? And then we go into it. We don't know if it's going to work. We're going to try it out. At what point did you know this is going to work for me?
Sheer determination.
Sheer will. That's what you're saying. Will. I looked at it and I said, I'm going to do it.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to start this business. Yeah. And I'm going to put 100% effort in it. And it's going to work.
That is a mindset. I will give you that. That is awesome. Yeah. That is awesome.
I will say, because I already had a basic understanding of how contracts work. And, truth be told, if I need something to get done at my home, I will pick up the phone and find someone to come do the work. Yeah. Where for the federal government, they're telling me what they want. So now I just got to go find someone that can go do the work.
Yeah.
Or if I can provide it, then go ahead and provide it myself.
Absolutely. And it's, that is how it happens sometimes, right? Sometimes just like you think about what you're doing and what you need and the problem that you have, and then you solve your problem and ultimately can solve other people's problems. And ultimately that can become a business. Yeah,
exactly. Because I've, working for someone for so long, For me, it became a point where I didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to spend time with family. I wanted to, be mom and go to gymnastics and soccer games and, without having to worry about a clock or can I leave work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And having that freedom and that opportunity to, one, build something for my family and still enjoy the family and still enjoy that time, for me was also pivotal in me deciding to start a business and go from there.
Awesome. That's awesome. So let's go back to, you were talking about your program earlier, right? How you break things into little bite-sized steps. Explain to me a little bit more about the program in general.
So what I've set up is a 5-day challenge. And so that challenge breaks it down where I'll help businesses find the solicitation, find the subcontractors to help fill that need, read through the scope or statement of work, and then actually put the bid together and submit it. And all that, I break it down in bite-sized pieces where by the 4th, if not 5th day, you will submit your first proposal.
Nice. That's awesome. And you mentioned to me in our call last week, you did mention something about how many deals you try to go after every day. What was that again?
So I try, once again, I am ambitious.
Yeah.
So I try to do one bid a day. Sometimes I don't get to it. But at least 15 to 20 a month. So what I found is when it comes to winning a government contract, you cannot assume that just because you're on these sites and bidding, that they are just going to choose your company.
Yeah.
There is competition out there. And to increase your chances of winning a bid, you just increase the amount of bids you put in. So far, for example, this year, I've submitted 17 bids, and I intend to submit a whole lot more in the next couple of months.
What would you say is your best contract that you've won up to this point?
So my best contract I've won so far is a snow removal in Utah.
Nice.
Yes. I know nothing.
And you're not an expert in snow removal, I'm assuming.
I am not an expert in snow removal. I am nowhere close to Utah. However, I did find the people that knew about snow removal and could do the job, and they're doing an amazing job out there.
So how do you manage that though? Like from where you're at, how do you manage the work how do you manage the work in that situation?
So between the vendor and myself, we actually have an agreement, right? They'll sign a statement of agreement saying this is the work that's required and that's expected. These are our payment terms. And if they do not follow, that performance, that scope of work, for example, then there would be a breach of contract. So they are their own business, of course, and they want to continue making money. So they also, have some skin in the game. Whenever the snow does fall, they'll go out there, they'll remove the snow. If the weather just kind of comes in and snow just starts falling and it's not forecasted, they'll get a phone call from the facility managers in Utah, and those guys have to show up within a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
The individuals that are there and on ground also has everyone has exchanged numbers. And so that way there's always a flow of communication if there's things that need to be done, if there's an emergency or, somebody didn't show up to work, like there is definitely a flow of communication when those things happen, for sure. So my eyes may not be on, but the people that are there that want the work done, their eyes are definitely on.
Okay. And I know that, and I want to touch on this point because you said that they do want to earn money and they obviously want to continue getting work. One thing that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think with government contracts, it's a little bit more important to deliver than it is on a private sector contract. Because reputation is super important with the US government and municipalities as well. So, and I remember we were talking about how you develop your reputation. If you can give us a quick rundown of how you're developing your reputation, And also, if you can kind of describe like what is the relationship, because we were talking about primes and set aside sub companies, and also explain the relationship between you and the contract. Also, how do you develop your reputation through the contract? If you can break that down, that'd be great.
Yeah. So when you start bidding on government contracts, you are considered a prime contractor. If you subcontract out the work, you're still the prime contractor. You're just subbing it out. Being a brand new contractor, you don't always have past performance. Therefore, you really don't have anything to go off of as far as building that reputation. But as you start to win contracts, you are now building up that reputation as being a reliable contractor that can deliver on these different services if needed. So there is a higher probability of you getting larger contracts, being sold source, meaning like the government or contracting officer actually reaches out to you to ask you for service because you have built up yourself as a prime doing other things. Yep. Perfect example, if you are in computing, IT world, it may be a little difficult to get into government contract and win large accounts initially. However, you can build up your reputation and build up that past performance, taking on other projects like lumber or janitorials or something like that. So when your past performance, that questionnaire does come up and that they see that you have a history of successful projects being completed or successful services continuously being done, they're now saying, hey, this person is someone we can trust, and you have a better chance of winning those larger contracts. As a prime contractor, you are speaking to the contracting officer or the CO, right? The person who is looking to get this contract fulfilled. And then on the other hand, you also have vendors or companies that you can reach out to get the physical work done. And those would be considered your subcontractors.
Awesome. Cool. I'm glad you broke that down because, most of these, most of the people that are listening to the podcast are new businesses, people that are interested in starting a business. And if they want to go get a government contract, I want them to understand like there's a flow and there's a hierarchy. It's not just, we're just going to go ahead and get a contract and everything's going to be totally, easy and for this or that, kind of just the process. They need to understand there's a process to it, that there's a hierarchy to this. Because I know when we were starting to go for government contracts 10 years ago when I started the company, like everyone kept using this term small business set aside. And I was like, I have no clue what a small business set aside is. Like, but everyone kept telling me you need to be a small business set aside. I had no clue. And you probably know small business set aside. It's just simply a subcontractor. It just happens. There's a certain amount of funds that are dedicated for small businesses. That is part of a contract. They usually have them in the contract, and it'll say you need to apply X amount of dollars to a small business of some sort, and that's what a small business set aside would be. And have you experienced that before with small business set asides in your contracts at all?
Yeah. So actually, most of the solicitations that I go after are small businesses because I am considered a small business. We have only X amount of employees, or we have not reached that dollar amount where we would be considered a large business. So if you are a small business, meaning that you just started out on your entrepreneurship journey, or you've been in for a while and you have, for example, under, 25 employees, as an example, you're considered a small business. And so you can actually bid on any solicitation that says small business. Other set-asides come into play as like a women-owned small business, veteran-owned small business. But you actually have to have certain certifications, right? You have to have the SBA certify you as a veteran-owned or service-disabled veteran-owned. Go through another certification or vetting processing that you are women's own, small business. So those set-asides are simply different pots of money that can open up to any businesses that are bidding on contracts.
Does your program go through that, by the way? It's just a question that I have. Does your program actually And if you don't, I would say add it. But if you does it have the steps to getting certified as a women-owned small business or Hispanic-owned small business or minority-owned small business?
So no, it does not have those capabilities yet.
Okay, that would be a great addition.
It would be. Thank you for that.
It would be a great addition.
When it comes to bidding, because there are so many opportunities for total small businesses that having the other economic distinctions is almost not necessary.
Okay.
There are more small business opportunities and solicitations out there than there are service disabled veterans, than there are women-owned small businesses.
Okay.
So that just says that, hey, I'm a small business. This is my pot of money. Now I am a women's owned business. Here's another pot of money. Oh, I'm also a veteran. Here's another pot of money, right? Now, 3 different pots of money that you can play in.
Yeah.
But really, a really large one would be your small businesses.
You know, that's interesting. That's an interesting take because I just hit my desk really hard. So it's an interesting take because I know for when I first started, everyone kind of said, Ray, you're Hispanic, like become a Hispanic owned business because there's opportunities. We had a business partner that was a woman, same thing. They said, oh, you can also do a women owned business because there's other opportunities there. But what you're saying is that in this scenario, the distinction may not bring as much opportunities as just being a small business. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. And I want to get that point across because I know I got bombarded with that when I first started my company. Everyone's like, put yourself in this pocket of you're this type of business. And I remember just thinking, I was like, everyone makes it sound you're going to get more business if you do that. If you dwindle down to this small little subsect of a type of business, whether you're women-owned, whether you're Hispanic, a minority, whatever, that's what everyone kept telling me when I first started. So I think that's an awesome distinction that you just mentioned, that just being a small business, the pool is just as big, if not bigger, actually, based on what you're saying.
It's bigger.
So it's bigger. You're like, I want to own that bigger and better.
Bigger and better.
So, what are I want to take this back over to you as the business owner, right? You as owning a business. What are some of the challenges that you feel like you have faced ever since you started?
So initially, you're getting into it, willpower. It really was getting into the SAM.gov and figuring out where everything was. Okay, now that I figure out where to find my solicitations, reading through all these attachments, like, what do they want?
Yeah.
Why is there so much stuff to read? So there was that piece in the beginning of this journey. And then learning simple things like, okay, business checking account and credit cards and things that I had never touched before. And now I'm like, oh, a boss, right? Like here's a checking account. Here's, 2 business credit cards. Let's pay the vendors.
Do you have to have an escrow account for your business?
I don't.
You don't? Okay. Just a question. I didn't know if that was required or anything, because I know there's some industries that require some type of an escrow account if you're getting money from a specific source. That's like you get a lump sum up front and then you have to draw from that lump sum. Usually you have to have some type of escrow account. That's why I wanted to ask that question. I didn't know if government contracts require that or not.
No, they don't.
Okay.
Like usually, for example, in the beginning, I always tell people to start out with solicitations and contracts that are service-based. Service-based being janitorial is a really good example. They're providing a service. And that does not require you to put any money up front. That doesn't require any of that. They go in, they do the work. At the end of the month, the vendor will invoice you. You will turn around, create an invoice for yourself, including your premium on top for managing, and you submit that to the government.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I have a question. This is a big question that people have asked me in the past. How long does it usually take for you to get paid on a contract after the work has been completed? Or is it happening as the work is being done over time?
Both. So some contracts are pay as you go. So my snow removal it went from being submit the invoices at the end of the month to submit the invoices every time services are rendered.
Okay.
So every time the service is rendered, submit an invoice that will get paid. Others, like my lawn care, that is done at the end of the month. So at the end of the month, my vendor sends me an invoice. I put it all together and then I send the government.
Nice. Okay. So, and you said, when did you start this business again?
So as of this month, 1 year.
It's been 1 year.
It's been 1 year.
What would you say? 1 year. I remember my 1 year mark. So I definitely, that's awesome. That is actually awesome. Cause the statistic is like, what is it? 95% of businesses fail within a certain amount of years. Right. And I think it goes down like based on years. So it's like, I think 1 year, I think 50% of businesses fail within 1 year. And I think it's like the percentage goes higher as you go more years. So you've already passed the first tier.
Yes.
So that is an awesome thing to have. My question to you is, in that year, has your role evolved from where you started to what you're doing today?
My role has evolved from a brand spanking baby entrepreneur, just working on the business, learning everything, trying to decipher how this is done, right? Building the stamina to be able to submit proposals every 2 days. It took a while to now I am expanding. Right now I'm like, hey, we're doing 5-day challenges. We're going to add on some mentorship program. Like I'm at a point where now we're building. Now I get to work just on the business and really expanding it from where it is now. And I mean, one of the reasons I get so excited about this specifically is the fact that it's not a 9 to 5. I have a customer that's telling me exactly what they want, when they want, how they want it. I go out there and fulfill the need that they have and then turn around and get paid for it without having to spend 8 to 10 hours a day doing that. Like brand spanking new, I would say if I had to work on just one solicitation, it would take me about 3 hours between making the phone calls, sending the emails, reading what they need me to do, etc. And then once I'm done with that, I can go off and continue the rest of my day. Go to the gym, walk the dog, life. Go on a vacation. I have done this job from 3 different locations worldwide.
Nice.
Like there isn't a restriction to where you can do this and for how much you can make doing this.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to give you that space to have that, to say that piece, because I knew where you were going with that. And because it's really good what you mentioned. Entrepreneurship can be hard, but there's a fulfillingness to it. And in your case, what you're saying is, like, I started a software tech company. Like off of day one, it was stress, finding talent, I went crazy on day one. Like what you were mentioning there was really good. It's like, if you're starting a business, you can get into this, provide a service. First of all, you mentioned that earlier, provide a service, which service businesses are a lot simpler to start because there's not much overhead or anything in order to get that started. But what you're saying is so true when it comes to getting contracts. If you go to private sector and try to get contracts, you're going to be working to get those contracts, competing against all these other people against those contracts. And you do too on the government side, like you said. But the thing is, you don't know exactly what these customers want in the private sector. But in your case, they're telling you exactly what they want. All you got to do is find the solution to solve their problem. And then you just submit it. And you could submit, like you said, a whole bunch of them. And if any one of them lands, you already have a pipeline, a service, a pipeline. You have all that stuff set up. And you've really not had to invest all too much to get there. That's why I wanted to bring you on the show, because I thought this is a great thing, especially if you're an entrepreneur looking at starting out. This is one of the great avenues. This is an avenue that when I started, everyone told me I need to get into. However, I was in the software tech space. I don't know how much different it is when it comes to the solicitations and all the responsibilities, but I definitely know that I struggled at first because of the amount of work that it takes to get into, what I thought was Sam, doing the solicitations, doing all that stuff. And you said it right, like 3-4 hours reading through those. Some of those solicitations are pretty long, stuff like that. So, but let's go back to how you solve that problem, right? That how you solve that problem of having to go through all of this and being overwhelmed when you first get into it. Because I definitely want to land this plane of the service that you provide, because I think that's phenomenal. Because I feel like 10 years ago when I started this business, if you were around, I would have been like, hey, teach me, like, show me how to get these government contracts. So if you could go ahead and, I know we talked about it earlier, but just go ahead for the sake of towards the end of this podcast, as we're reaching the end of this podcast, tell us a little bit about, or more about your service. How people can get a hold of you? What do you have available right now that they can take advantage of to get them into the space?
So I've figured out that simplifying the process simply means finding the scope of work, what the federal government is asking for, the pricing sheet. So scope of work, pricing sheet, and the instructions to offer. Meaning, what do they want you to present to them when you're putting your bid together? That is the three things. If I know what the scope, if there's 5 different PDFs that I'm supposed to look at, I will automatically find the one that says scope of work. Once I find the scope of work, and I'll teach everyone how to find the scope of work, we go through that, pick out 1 or 2 things that would be relevant into telling a business what we would like them to do. And then we make contact with that business. Say it's window washing in Colorado. I will find a window washing company in Colorado, pick up the phone, and I would make a phone call. Once we've kind of gotten through that, and they're like, hey, I'm interested, let's do it. Okay, let me send you the pricing sheet. They'll fill out the pricing sheet, etc. And then from there, I will go to the instructions to offer and be like, all right, what do they want me to present in this bid? They want the pricing sheet. They'll most likely want a performance or your capabilities. And if it's not your capabilities, it's the capabilities of your vendor. And sign any forms that they require you to sign. Sometimes they may want additional information, but the instructions to offer will simplify the things that need to be presented in your bid. Mm-hmm. The scope of work will tell you the job that needs to be done, when it needs to be done. And the pricing sheet will have not only your vendor's price, but also your premium on top. And just those 3 things, breaking down those 3 things, where to look for it and what to look for, made this process so much simpler and faster. Because my job is to condense time for those who have come after me to learn from my own mistakes and not taking so long and trying to read everything and learn everything, to help you move faster in the process. So you can get up to, bidding on 2 or 3 a week if that's what you want to do.
Awesome.
So,
there's
that part. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
So how do they get a hold of you? How do people get a hold of you for this?
So since this is my 1-year anniversary month, I am starting my first 5-day challenge on government contracting made simple. It is my anniversary 5-day challenge, and I'm bringing it out to the world.
So what we'll do is, for those listening, we will put the link. We will put the information to, I think you have to register, right? Register for the 5-day challenge. So we'll put the registration link down in the description so that you can sign up. A few more questions, and actually one more big question really is, what advice would you give to anyone watching right now that is, or listening, that is interested in not only starting their own business, but maybe getting into a space similar to yours?
So when it comes to starting your own business, I would say stay the course. Because what I have learned throughout the journey is, once you put energy into something that is yours, it tends to succeed. We spend so much time and effort working outside of the home, growing an identity or growing a business for others. And it makes, community go round. But when you turn that same amount of energy into something that is yours, the growth is exponential. So stay the course. And because in doing so, you'll realize that you're less stressed, you have more time, and you start to enjoy life even more, because you're building something for you, you're building something for your family. It's a different way of seeing things around you. And then the second part of that question.
Nailed it though. You got it. That was it. I'll just say you hit all the right points. You hit all the right points. So Sheena, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Again, this was I was excited to hear your story and hear what you had to offer. Also talk a little bit about how the government contract works from your point of view. We have people that we've talked to that have very similar points of view, but there's that slight difference in the word easy or bite size. Almost everyone's like, oh, this is so much work, but I'm glad you're coming out here talking about how this is an opportunity for people who are starting their own business, but an opportunity for them to do something that requires very little when it comes to like the financial backing or the amount of resources. Like it's very, you made it seem a lot simpler than what other people have made it seem to me when I first started. So I really appreciate you coming on the podcast for that. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to get out of your head before we close it out?
Yes. So I know I didn't mention this earlier. However, in the year, just to be open, I've submitted about 64 bids and I've won 4. And I have seen as little as, $100 a month extra, or I have seen over $20,000 a month. So, and this is without me putting money up front aside from registering the business. So this is something that is very, very doable, very, very attainable in a short period of time. So like I said, I initially came in here because I was like, there is money to be made. Now I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to tell everybody because it's a gold mine. Yeah.
That's awesome. And the government will love you for it because they're always looking for people. They're always looking for people.
There is no shortage of bids. There's no shortage of solicitations. There's a lot.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add one thing to the end of that and kind of touches on what along the lines of what you're saying earlier, when the economy turns down, the contracts that continue to be posted or the opportunities that continue to be posted are those government contracts.
Correct.
So when private sector starts to lose money, lose opportunity, not have enough cash to be able to buy services for them, the one thing that's constant is the government is always going to be paying for services.
Absolutely. So, they are a guaranteed paying customer.
Exactly. I love that word, guaranteed paying customer. Well, again, thanks, Sheena, for coming on the podcast. And for those listening, again, check us out, learntobuildabusiness.com, Learn to Build a Business website. Also, the podcast, look for other stories that we have coming up. But again, I want to say thank you for Sheena, and all her information is going to be on the description of this podcast video, wherever you watch it, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify. So if you, after you listen to it, you can still go to YouTube, you can still go see the descriptions and get all the information on how to contact Sheena and how to get involved into, what she's doing and her program, and maybe sign up for her program so that you can learn more on how to do this for yourself. So again, thanks again, Sheena. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ray.
This is awesome. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Oh, you will.